has put this workshop on, amendments for junkyard regulations. So at this time, I guess, Joe, you can go ahead and start the whole process.
Okay, when it comes to junkyards, we've had these workshops. I've worked in Hamilton County for about over a year now, but it's actually been an ongoing issue even well before that. So basically, there's no decisions that we're going to come to tonight, but we just wanted to familiarize the county commissioners with what the process is, what we're attempting to do, and what exactly the requirements are. So when they adopted zoning, they've had junkyard regulations in place for a number of years. So this is not anything new. The problem is mainly what is the status of junkyards that are already out there? Are they all grandfathered in based on the zoning? Or is it possible to go back and give them partial protection, not entirely grandfathered in, and give them a time period, which was 3 years, I believe, what they were proposing before, to come into compliance with some of the design standards that are in the zoning. So that was being proposed before I started working with Hamilton County. Now we need to decide whether the county can stand behind that. Can the county compel somebody to go back and put screens in place in accordance with the regulations if they have been there before and are grandfathered in? Because even private property owners have some protections in place. And zoning's always operated by the fact that you can't retroactively go back and correct things that are out there when zoning was adopted or when zoning was amended. So it's kind of a giant leap, but we really would like to just make something that we are considering legally defensible so we can stand behind it and then move forward from there. So tonight, if y'all have any questions or anything that you want to bring up, any issues, then this is a good opportunity to get everything out in the open, clarified, so hopefully the county will all be on the same page.
What's the net effect for doing this, or changing those grandfather clauses?
It depends on what direction that we're going. Right now, we're not moving forward at all because we have two different options. One, can the county go back and make grandfather junkyards put up screens or put up design standards in conformance with the zoning? If they can't, then we're really not even dealing with anything but expansions. And that was one of the proposals because it's silent on what constitutes an expansion. And so we define what is an expansion. Is it when they move more junk on there, more cars on their property, or is it when they have the operation expand over into an adjoining property? So until we know if we can require them to put up screens and that sort of thing, if they are protected under non-conforming uses.
I think right now you've got it where you've got to have either a fence around it or trees there.
Right, 8 to 12 foot tall, yeah.
And are you saying that the trees aren't there and the fences aren't there on all these different junkyards?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Why don't you enforce what your rules are?
Well, the rules have been in place for a number of years, and these junkyards were already in place.
It's still a rule, isn't it?
Well, that's the whole point, and that's why we're here tonight.
Wayne, he doesn't do the enforcement.
Do what?
He doesn't do the enforcement.
If you have a use that was already there when the county adopted zoning, they can't go back and correct everything that's already out there. And that's pretty much where we stand right now. So the junkyards were already operated, already established before they adopted zoning, and then they adopted zoning. So it's questionable whether you can go back and make them in compliance with some of the requirements when they were already there. So it's not a question of not necessarily enforcing what we have on the books, it's can we do that to junkyards that have already been there for a number of years.
Can I ask questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have about 5 questions I want to ask. How many junkyards do we have now in Hamlin County, and where are these existing junkyards located?
Okay, I think Tina's been working on that to try to map where those junkyards are in the county.
Well, I'm going to give her a copy of this when I go back home and print it out and let her do some of this for me so I can get the information.
Ms. Holt, I think we've got 8 junkyards.
Hey, that sounds about right.
Okay, what are the current requirements to get a permit for a new junkyard in Hamlin County?
That's a state issued permit, not, Hamlin County does not issue that.
Do you know, sir?
The state has a dismantler permit that they have. Locally, I don't know if you have a permit, require a permit for junkyards.
And they would have to do a rezoning. If they had the current zone, then they would do a site plan, just like any other business would have to come through planning for approval. Or if they would have to come through a rezoning to get in the correct zone.
Do all the old landfills have permits?
No.
Or all the old junkyards?
No, they're all grandfathered. All the 8 that we
So them that are grandfathered don't have to have permits?
Right. Not
Okay.
county. Now, they still have to have their state dismantler's
Mhm.
license, but for the county, no.
What are the current limitations or requirements for expansion of an existing junkyard?
Right now, the zoning's silent on what is an expansion, and that's one of the amendments we were proposing, just to define what exactly is an expansion. And like I touched on earlier, if you move more junk on your property that's already operating as a junkyard, is that an expansion? More cars, so forth. And after many workshops, they decided that an expansion would constitute if you expanded your operation onto adjoining property outside of the footprint of the lot of record you're already operating on.
So you're telling me that it's all right if if there's a jointed property next to that landfill or to that junkyard, that they can go and expand it to that next property?
They may be able to, but if they do, that's not protected. So
Okay,
it's
good.
all a requirement.
Well,
But
that's
this
a
is being
plus.
proposed, so it's not finalized right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that's being proposed with the county commission. But if they expanded off their lot of record, then yes, they'd have to comply with the zoning.
Well, if you adopt the proposed changes to the junkyards, will an existing junkyard on a 5-acre parcel of land owned by Mr. X be able to expand into a separate 3-acre parcel owned by Mr. X but not previously used as a junkyard?
Well, like I said, they would be able to, they may be able to expand, but if they do expand onto an adjoining lot of record, whatever's on that lot of record that's been expanded would have to meet the requirements. of
Okay.
junkyards. They wouldn't be grandfathered, they wouldn't be protected.
They would have to get a permit, would they not?
Yes, I believe so.
They have to be approved.
Yeah.
And have to get a permit?
And they'd probably have to be rezoned.
Rezone.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, that sounds
But
good.
right now, the only zoning district that it's allowed in is the I-2 district, I believe, is a permitted use by right.
Like industrial business.
Yes.
Yes, environmental industrial, I believe.
Mm-hmm. We need more of that.
And I'm not sure if there's any I-2 properties
I've not found any
that
that
are
are
actually
vacant.
out there. So you've got a zoning district that's on the books that allows junkyards, but there's no actual property in Hamilton County that's zoned I-2.
Not even out where I live?
Washington County.
Oh, it's in the city. You're talking about city. Was you talking about city or county?
No, the county.
County.
Yeah.
The county, because the junkyards that are there were grandfathered in.
Uh-huh. So I understand. I'm trying to understand. I don't understand it all. Okay, so expand onto a 3-acre parcel owned by Y, but not previously used as a junkyard. Can you put a junkyard in if it was not a junkyard?
It would have to be rezoned.
Like you said. I'm
It's the same scenario we've been talking
Okay.
about it.
Okay.
They may be able to do it. There are some distance requirements also. They can't be within 500 feet of an established residence, and they can't be within 300 feet of a county road.
I know
Those are requirements that are on the books right now. They have been for years.
I know I'm asking questions that you've already talked about, but I'm wanting to get it down pat and try to understand it as clear as I can understand it. And okay, must any expansion of existing junkyards be an expansion onto adjacent properties? And you said they'd have to get a permit, they'd have to be rezoned, and come before you all before they could be rezoned.
Right. If they expanded off their property, it pretty much would be treated like a brand new operation.
Okay?
They wouldn't be grandfathered.
I got 2 more and then I'm going to sit down. If a junkyard ceases to operate for 7 years, which used to be 6 months, long years ago,
Right, the grace period.
so that right there slapped me right in the face. I'd rather have the 6 months than the 7 years. Can the original owners start it back up, and can someone else purchase the former junkyard property and start it back up again?
If it's been discontinued for 7 years, they lose that protection, so no.
Okay, that's a plus. Okay. Did you, Mr. Barrett, is that how you pronounce your name? Get a legal opinion from Mr. Capps on the non-forming status on existing junkyards?
Not at this moment, no.
Okay. Mr. Capps, do you know when you'll be able to give him one?
To give who one?
Mr. Barrett?
If he requests for one, I can give him one.
Uh-huh. Well, we need to know what the existing, what the legal opinion for the existing
I mean, I've
junkyards
got an
are.
opinion on it, but I'm not an attorney.
Uh-huh.
I think we would be on much more solid ground than if we got a legal opinion from an attorney. Now, it did send a memo to get a legal opinion. I just haven't seen the answer yet.
It would make it more honest and more, I think more understanding if we had a legal
Potential
opinion.
ramifications and potential controversies.
Mhm.
Make sure that the county's on solid ground and there's no liability that's going to come back to the county if we try to do this.
I was asking that just so I could get a legal opinion, okay? All right, thank you.
For showing interest. I know some of the county commissioners are in the audience. You're more than welcome. I mean, you can make this as interactive as you want to make it. Junkyards are probably not something you deal with on a regular basis, so you're more than likely not totally familiar with what we have on the books right now, but feel free to ask any questions that you would like.
Joe, I'll ask a question. I hate to see the county back up and do away with the screens and say it wasn't done the right way.
Mr. Anderson, let me jump in here just a second. There is a real question about whether we can enforce the screens and trees at all on the existing junkyard. In fact, we believe there's a case out there that says that we cannot enforce it. So,
My
where did
question, that's going to be my question. Joe, is there any way legally we can?
Well, not being an attorney, my opinion is that
It's a
you
loop.
cannot, because if they are protected under non-conforming grandfathering status, then that should be in its entirety. However, I would like to get a legal opinion only because I think if we can legally do that and make them put up screens, then I think nobody would argue that it would be beneficial to the county.
What about the citizens out there that live around those junkyards? What about their rights? And they pay taxes to live in that.
Of course, I didn't mean to cut you off either.
I'm fine now. No, you're fine.
What is the, what other counties do you consult, Joe, besides Hamlin County?
I work with Anderson County and Granger County.
Okay, what would be, say, Anderson counties, because I know they have junkyards. What is their, how do they do it?
Well, they have a lot of more mechanisms in place as far as to administer their regulations. They have a lot more staff out of their office. The requirements vary somewhat, but they're all fairly similar. And the whole purpose of it is to provide some safeguards in place.
But
for
is
people that live
the,
around junkyards.
I guess our question is, have they gone back to grandfathered properties and changed regulations?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. In Henderson or Granger?
I'm not sure you can do that, and that's the overarching question.
Well, I know that. I'm just wondering how it was around, because I know, I think there are several on Chapman Highway, junkyards, but it seems like unless Knoxville did it way back when, Knox County rather, they're, most of them have some type of protection. I know the new ones do, but I can understand that with the older ones, and I don't know what's an older one. You know, we've got some here that have been 40 years, 50 years, 60 years.
Absolutely. So when they adopted zoning way back when, if you had a snapshot of everything that was out there in the county, everything.
But our zoning was in what,
1990.
September of 1990.
Yeah, so I'm sure Knox County had it several years before that.
Yeah, and they may not be the best example to use because they are a metropolitan government, so they operate a little bit differently.
Well, Knoxville's not metro, they have the city and the county,
Yeah.
don't they?
They do. They have different departments for the county and the city.
Yeah, I understand.
But they do things a little differently in Knox County, so.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
they
just-
still all together have to be within the law.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unless they have some private act that overrides the law or something in their charter that will allow them to do it,
Yep.
which is very doubtful. And then you also have some cities that are home rule cities. They might have something in the way their charter is set up that would allow them to bypass state law. But overall, and Hamlin County falls in this category, the state law often supersedes local control on some particular uses. And the state even has some requirements for junkyards. They're not really that relevant because they're in relation to highways and that sort of thing. It's in Title 54, which is usually deals with transportation.
Is there a junkyard in the city? Where?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Eminem has a junkyard back in behind his business, but it's fenced in. You can see it from Martin Luther King.
M&M's next one over.
Mm-hmm. On Jonathan Avenue.
Appalachia.
They sure do.
Well, just to give you an analogy of why this is the overarching question, just hypothetically speaking, suppose Hamlin County adopted landscaping regulations. And they said that within 5 years, every business in Hamlin County has to conform to these landscaping regulations that we adopted. Well, I would think that's highly questionable, and I don't think it really can be done. So the situation with the junkyards is very similar. They were given 3 years to come into compliance for some of the design standards.
Going forward, that can be done though, because I know the city has that. Washington City has a tree lady, you know, that you have to do certain places, certain landscaping in certain zones. But that's not, that's going forward. Any change to that property.
It's just using an example that anytime you adopt some new regulations, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to go back
Yeah.
and make somebody comply with those, even if it's a reasonable time, 3 years, 5 years, or what's considered a reasonable time. If they're protected, they're protected.
I just hate to see the county go backwards.
I hate to see the county get sued because we're the ones that have to pay for it.
Yeah. We were given wrong advice years ago. We could do this, really can't.
I think, here's what I think happened. I think we passed this, and I'm speaking from memory only. I think that you passed it, and I think after the fact, there was a case that came down that said that you can't make these grandfathered junkyards do what you're saying that they must do. So, you know, to say that we gave the wrong advice probably isn't exactly right.
That's
At the time, it probably was the right advice, but it can become wrong over time if the courts decide to do something other than try to protect the property rights of some versus the property rights of others. I mean, it's just, they just make a choice, and sometimes it's a wrong choice.
Thank you. You want a bite?
That's about it. It's over.
Well, they might have anything they want to add. I mean, from the county commissioner's perspective, I mean, where do y'all think we stand on what course of action we take from here? I know we need a legal opinion to know that we can do this, but after that, we've had the junkyard regulations in place for a number of years, so this isn't something we're proposing that's entirely new. We don't have the ability to make them put up screens. And what we're proposing is that the amendment deals specifically with expansions, because it's pretty much silent on that right now. No one really knows what constitutes an expansion because it's open to interpretation. One of the amendments is to pin that down and define exactly what expansion is. And from that point on, anytime you have a new junkyard, it would have to be in compliance with the regulations. And anytime under certain circumstances you expanded one, that section would also have to be in compliance.
That section only.
Yeah.
Did Mr. Riley ever get a business license to run his junkyard?
I really don't handle that administratively, so I.
Do you know, Tina?
Mr. Riley doesn't have a license to operate a junkyard or a car lot, as far as I'm aware.
Why does he get by with that?
Well, we took him through the court for about a year and a half, and within just a matter of 6 or 8 months later, he's back back doing the same thing. So we intend to pursue that again.
I
Ms.
hope he
Whitaker and
will.
I have discussed that, and the consensus is that we want to pursue that and pursue it to the end, to the every last degree we can.
Well, I would appreciate if you would.
We're planning to.
So the best policy, what you're doing is can't do anything about what exists, but protect future and try to put something on expansion.
That's what we're proposing, unless there's some.
Well, that's
case-
all you can do.
There's some case out there, or legally we can do more.
I don't think that they can expand outside of the parcel on which they were operating when they were grandfathered.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Even if they own the land. Another
Even if
parcel
they
of
own another parcel
of land.
Another parcel of
Deeded
land,
parcel of land, as long as it's deeded.
a deeded parcel of land, like it be a lot number or whatever, I don't believe that, legally or not, I don't think that we should allow it, first of all. And I don't think that they should be entitled to under the grandfather clause, because that parcel on which they're, now, if they've operated 2 parcels and they were grandfathered, they were operating 2 parcels when that was grandfathered, then they got 2 parcels.
Mr. Caps, that additional piece we're talking about has to be rezoned.
I think they've got to rezone it.
Yeah,
If you're
that's a
gonna
big
use another
process.
parcel, a separate parcel, they would need to rezone it and get it permitted.
Okay, I did create a map of all 8 junkyards in Hamlin County, and it shows the footprint. I don't know what else to say. It's the parcel that the junkyards are located on. There is not, in the 8 junkyards, there is no property around that they own to expand.
Good.
But what you have to understand is some of them are only using half of their lot.
They can move into that other half.
But they can use, if they have 5 acres, they're only using 1 acre.
Yeah.
You still have 4 acres to go.
That
That's
it
not
just
gonna
doesn't
be
come into
considered an expansion, that's them using the property, because at the time of zoning, when we adopted zoning, nobody went out there and said, this is all you're using your grandfather for 1 acre and not 5 acres.
I think
We
that's
just
why
said,
we're here.
yeah, this is the parcel.
No, I'm talking about the United States.
But I do have a map that identified all of them, and each one has a footprint. And I'm hoping that we could go by that for the future if we see that they're expanding, that we could use this map so we'll have a history. There's something to go by, where we didn't have anything in the past.
Well, since y'all didn't go out there and tell them, that this piece was not grandfathered in, I don't think they should be allowed to grandfather it in. Because you all you just didn't go out there and say, even if they own 5
She
acres.
wasn't born in 1990.
Oh,
I was born in 1990.
Oh.
But I mean, we didn't go out through all of Hamlin County and say there's a single lot here in the incorrect zone, there's a business here. I mean, that was just an overall, they adopted zoning and what was there was allowed. I'm just trying to fix it now to where we know exactly where the junkyards are located, what parcels they are on. So if we see an expansion, it's something that we can go by.
okay.
Like I said, a history where we've not had one in the past.
So you're saying to me they can't expand?
1990.
Not beyond that parcel that they're located on.
Good.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get clear.
And regardless of what scenario ultimately we take, they're not gonna be allowed to expand off the lot of record regardless, because there's been a non-conforming section in the zoning since they adopted that, and it generally says that you cannot expand a non-conforming use unless it meets all the requirements of the zoning. So if a junkyard, just like any other use, if they tried to expand off their lot of record, it would trigger that. And that lot of record that is new, the expansion, would have to be in compliance.
Well, I've seen Scotty Lee, because I've lived out there all my life. We only had 1 junkyard when I was a kid growing up. 1. Now we've got 4 or 5. And I've watched Scotty Lee expand his all the way up to the top of the hill.
But he might own the land. I think that's what you're saying,
Yeah,
as a
if you own
tract.
the land, he can't.
has one lot of record of the tract.
No, he had that one spot, and it's moved and moved and moved, and he's even built buildings on it. I've seen it with my own eyes. I live across the road from it.
History is behind that.
How much land's he got?
I have no idea.
Asked her.
She knows he's expanded.
He's coming for
Tina-
the board for approval on that,
Some of it he did, some of it he didn't.
yeah.
On his existing property,
Yeah,
which he can do that.
Yeah.
Hello, Gwen.
but he wasn't grandfathered in to expand. He had a lot that he started out with. And I watched him just get bigger and bigger.
Well, it's like Mac Johnson, Rebecca Johnson was able to expand because they owned the property at the time of zoning. So she came before the board to expand onto those lots that showed that her father owned them at the time of zoning.
Yeah, I know about that.
So those were approved to expand because they had the property prior to zoning.
Well, Scotty didn't. Scotty bought the property from his dad in, I don't know what year. It was after zoning.
Well, just keep in mind, there's nothing being proposed, or nothing that exists right now that would allow somebody to expand off their property as far as a junkyard, and they wouldn't have to come into compliance. The only proposal is what constitutes an expansion. And right now, it doesn't say specifically what an expansion is, so that's what we're proposing to put in there. So now everybody knows what the ground rules are. You know what constitutes an expansion.
That'd be the 7.4K that you're looking at here.
Yes,
That'll be
yes, sir.
the new regulation that we're proposing that the county commission will vote on.
Yes, that's right.
Who is wanting to expand? Is somebody wanting to expand?
Nobody's wanting to expand to my knowledge, but we want to put something in place before we have to deal with that situation.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to say that the only reason that this got started was because you called to ask about Rebecca Johnson's trees that had died.
Mm-hmm.
When I spoke with Midge Jessamine, which was the planner, when she reviewed those regulations, she questioned whether or not that we can make them put the trees. Because I just went over that with her, because a lot of the trees had been mowed down by the road department. They had planted them and then got mowed down. Some of them had died. A lot of the junkyards, most of them, the trees didn't last because they weren't the size that was required.
Well, it didn't hurt them anyway because they didn't buy them. The county gave it to them.
The Soils Conservation Office
Mhm.
gave them the saplings, so they were very small, and I guess that's the reason the road department mowed them down, because you couldn't really tell that that's what they were. But this is how it got started. Do we make them replace the trees that were already planted? But when Midge looked at it, her question was, should we have done that? And that's what that's what we're trying to fix in the office. Is it go back and put the trees in, or is it something that the trees and walls are no longer an issue?
I'd just love to see it cleaned up. That's all.
That's Mr. Anderson's point, that we have to back up because we can't enforce that.
Right.
It looks.
I mean, if we could enforce it, I'd send letters out to all the junkyards saying your trees need to be replaced.
We have it in place now. We're not taking it away. We gotta figure out if in fact we still have the right to do it. There's significant question of whether we have the right to. And you don't wanna try to enforce something that you don't have a legal right to enforce.
Okay, so that section C, 7.4C, we're still leaving that in where we can do that if the legal opinions say that we can't.
That would be for new junkyards.
Only for me.
Yes. Which is questionable, but it applies to all new junkyards. So it's gonna be in there regardless. It's just, can we apply that particular section to the grandfather junkyard?
Gotcha.
Because if you look at the regulation, it's development standards. So it's new development. If someone comes in and wants to open a new junkyard, they're gonna have to go by all of those
Comply
regulations.
outside of the business.
Yeah.
In addition to the rezoning, and also has to be minimum of 5 acres. So I can't just say, yes, they'll be able to expand, they've got to meet all the criteria of the zoning.
I understand.
Plus, it's got to go through the rezoning process, but ultimately the county commission decides whether to rezone.
I know. I just wish y'all could do more with the grandfather stuff. That's bad.
And my other question, I don't know if it's a legal question or not, but can I, and we've not in the past, ask all the junkyard businesses to submit their business license and their dismantler's license annually to make sure that we keep up with if the business is still in operation. There's no other way that, I mean, there's a time period that they lose their grandfather status, but if we're not collecting that data, I can't keep up with it because I don't have the information. So can we ask that they submit?
We can ask them. We can put down a rule that says they must submit it each year.
If that, I mean, I just don't know.
What happens if they don't comply? There's an open question, and we would have to have an answer to it ultimately at some point when somebody didn't comply. But if they're grandfathered, and we know that by not carrying on your business for what, 6 months?
No,
It's
7
7
years.
Is it 36 months for a business?
Locally, it's 6 months, but there is a state law, TCA 13-7-208, that allows up to 30 months, 30 continuous months, and that supersedes the local requirement. So 2.5 years, not that long.
If we knew that for 2.5 years someone had not submitted their business license and they had not been paying state tax and they had not been submitting their dismantler's license, then maybe there was a 30-month time frame that passed that would prevent them from continuing to, or from selling it and having another person come in and operate as a junkyard.
Right.
So, you know, that's certainly a reasonable request, it seems to me. But again, I haven't researched whether we can legally do that. I don't know whether we could. We're given legal right to do a lot of other things.
I just don't know how you
Complain
can
about.
keep up with a non-conforming use if I don't have records showing how long the business has been open if they still have their license.
Agreed.
Seems like it's a much stronger case to require that.
Right.
It's not for them losing their grandfather status. It's just once you establish a date, you've got to have something on the books to verify that they have been operating as a junkyard.
Well, they've got a special status and they ought to be required to prove it every year.
Yeah.
Me and Tina talked about this many times.
Wouldn't the state keep up with that?
They do.
As far as their dismantling license is concerned.
Yeah.
They're not gonna let that expire.
Yeah,
Well, they
That's
have,
expensive.
There was one in here.
We've
that
had
did.
two.
There was one standing in here
yeah.
a few months ago.
Lakeway.
I don't know who it was, but I remember him.
Yeah, he just forgot to
Beg
review
for
it.
Well, the
Forgiveness.
state has not sent out their,
They don't do that anymore.
okay, well, they haven't sent out any paperwork for them to come in and renew their license, so I've had a couple of them call in and ask. And they've not been closed. I mean, they've
Used
been
to, the
operating.
county would send us a letter saying
Yeah.
we need to renew. Now, the state says, you know, you're
You have to
responsible
keep
for
up
your own
with it.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you go over it, then,
Right.
you know, the state steps in and sends you a nasty letter.
What is the charge for getting another dismantler's license?
I wouldn't know that.
I'd say it's not cheap.
I'd say not either. What if they don't get the dismantler's license? What if they don't have the dismantler's license? They do have a right to come and buy it. And how long do they have to do that? Like 30 months?
As far as locally,
If they don't have a dismantler's license. And they're still doing business, but they don't have a dismantler's license. How long can they get by with that? And how long?
well, in their own best interest, they would have to go back and verify if they had a dismantler's license less than that 30 continuous months, whatever year that was. At some point, they had a dismantler's license.
Do you know if they do have dismantler's license?
I don't know that for certain.
Then how do you know they have a dismantler's license?
At this point, we don't. We don't have anything in place that requires them to have a dismantler's license. But the state has
State
their
would require
requirements.
it. wouldn't it?
So the state knows if they have
The
dismantler's
state
license.
does,
Yeah.
But locally, there's nothing in place.
As long as somebody knows and you can call them and find out.
You should be able to.
Yeah, I have before.
Would the state come in and close the junkyard if they didn't have a dismantler's license?
Right. Thanks, Tina.
I mean,
They might.
Do they have a representative that comes in and says your business is now closed, or does that fall back on our department or our county?
Doesn't fall back on us to enforce the state dismantler's license law. I mean, it
But
would
if they
be-
do not have their dismantler's license, permit, business license, after so long, they should lose their grandfather status and the property should be cleaned up, just like any other non-conforming use.
$400 is the fee. World's at your fingertip, folks.
For what? Dismantler's
Just
license?
This is
Per
expensive
year?
as I thought.
Application.
Is that every year, is that something that,
Application.
a new application?
And your business
An
license is based
application.
on your revenue.
And then the
Tax
business
law,
license.
sales tax and all that.
Gross sales.
That's handled out of the state now.
Yeah, you go through the state, let them, just follow them on those. Used to be down here.
Used to collect it at the courthouse. Now you
Yeah.
send it into the state.
The business license, did you say, Mr. Capps? That's what I thought.
If we're gonna try to incorporate something into the local regulations where they have to verify, then that's something that can be looked into.
Why haven't they done anything to Mr. Ridley?
Did the county even get a list of business licenses in the state? I mean,
Yes.
from the state, did we get a list?
We get the delinquents. They apply for business license here,
Right,
but it's reported to Nashville, or wherever it's reported.
right, you gotta do it online nowadays, you gotta do
There
it.
again, it's issued here.
The state done
Right.
something to Mr. Ridley.
Whatever,
It's, the original license is issued here.
correct.
And then it's, from the reporting is done
Yeah,
elsewhere. So they
reporting and
get
payment of the money goes to the.
They get a delinquent, notice of delinquency, pretty sure they do. County court properties. And it says here, if you look at it, it just tends, what has to be, they've got 30 points on there. One of them is it has to have a business license. There's a lot of different things on it.
Right.
I think we wait for somebody to tell us that instead of looking for ourselves. But I would just mirror look at that application, and it tells you what they have to have. And I would think they would have to continue it, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They have to get a new one every year.
No, they renew their
Oh.
business license.
Dismantler's license, don't they have to get one
I
every
don't
year?
know.
They renew it, that's right. They renew it, you're right.
I think there would be a fee for it.
Yeah, they renew it every year.
I would think there would be one probably. Your business, your city and county, you gotta renew them every year.
These are some questions we can look into.
Why has not the state done something to Mr. Ridley?
I couldn't tell you.
Because you give the state gives a business license and the dismantler's license.
Right.
I'm sure the state's probably not even aware of what his property looks like.
You're probably right about that.
It's Mr. Riley on Buell
Usually,
Chapel.
Buell Chapel.
Buell Chapel. He just has cars.
Off of St. Paul.
He has cars on the right of way, has more than 5 cars on a parcel of property. He basically is operating a business out there and has been. We shut him out and shut him down for a little while. It took about 4 or 5 court appearances to do it. He always has he's got to have a knee replaced, he had a heart attack, you name it, he had it. And we finally got him to court, we got him fined $2,900. Hadn't stopped him apparently, so we need to get back out there and get
Probably
him.
makes more than 2,900.
Do you ever get them off the side of the road?
He got him off the side of the road for a period of time.
They're back.
And they're
We
back.
went out there, I took Danny and I went out there multiple times, talked to him, told him what he had to do, get those off. He went back to Sessions Court with Judge Snyder, it was a circus. Not Judge Snyder, but him, he was a real
He's a character.
pill, he's a pill.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, the place out next to you, I don't know who it is, it's on the right before you get to Big A Market. What is that?
Talking about Livy's car lot?
Okay, so that is a car lot.
It's
Okay.
in a C1 zone, I believe,
Okay.
commercial.
to really move a bunch of cars from Little Mountain out to his own place there, didn't he?
We had to go out to Little Mountain and tell him what he had to do out there as well. So we pursued it. It was a year and a half long deal that we had to deal with him, and we're gonna have to do it again. And we'll do it more finally this time.
And we charged him, what'd you say?
It was about $2,900 or so.
Did he?
I don't know if he's ever paid
Did he
it or
pay
not.
that?
I don't think he has, Bill. We can garnish his bank account to figure out where it is.
We'll take a few of those cars to the crusher.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, on the right of way.
Yeah, on the right of way.
Now, how many feet does a junkyard have to be off the road? Oh, but if they're grandfathered in, that's where it stays. That won't help me none. If it's grandfathered in, like it's grandfathered in out in my community, if it's three feet off the road, it's okay. They can be sitting nearly on the road and it's okay.
Once it's out of the right of way, that's not.
Well, it's close.
If the sheriff would do something,
Yeah.
it'd be a little bit better. Well, whoever tried to enforce. And that's another thing, our parking ordinance.
Yeah, that needs to be updated, doesn't it?
We don't have one.
They move pretty fast when I take pictures. I don't have a problem with that no more. I take pictures.
I don't move very fast when you take my picture.
Well, that's because you're not a Ford.
Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Barrett?
I just want to say that, we can, I don't want to push these guys out of business. Not everybody can afford just to go out and pay somebody to have something done to their car. Junkyards are a needful thing to a lot of people. And we don't want to, I don't think as commissioners or whatever, push these people out. I have a lot of questions as how far off can they be off the road that they don't have to have the trees or fence or whatever. I heard it's 30 feet. Is it that far?
If they're grandfathered in, there is no requirement. If it's new or an expansion, it's 300 feet.
And I agree with Gwen, she's right. People out there in that district pay taxes, but you know what? They do too. If they're supposed to be. I hope they are. But, well, I've been out there a time or two, with a couple of junkyards recently, and that phone was constantly ringing off the hook. People wanting parts. So, evidently somebody's using them. So, I just say we just need to be careful. I think we need to be careful not to.
Well, most businesses play by the law.
Right.
They don't.
No.
Now, some do.
Yeah.
I guess about the neatest one I've seen is the I don't know what it's called anymore, but.
Like where? Trying to dip.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's in the county.
And it should be screened because it's on a state highway.
But that fence, you couldn't even.
No. Just a fence around it.
Well, that's
They did
considered.
plant
They
trees.
have trees.
Yeah, little bitty ones. They cut them. They cut the tops out of them. They cut the tops out of them.
They had the best looking trees, to be honest with you.
I agree with you, but they cut the tops out of them.
Yeah.
Well, there's some state laws, what you just said, though, that they have to get a TDOT to beautification certificate to be able to do what they do where they're at.
You know what Roger Hunt did? He put the screening around his fence. He did. Roger Hunt did.
When you had junkyard.
No, he's got where he works on cars and fixes them, but he put a screening around his fence. Now that is something that he would care about other people that do care about their property. And I know I'm not going to take my property with me, and I'm not trying to put junkyards out of business. I just want them to clean up their act. Is that a sin? Because if it's a sin, God help us. It needs help. You all don't live out there. I lived out there when I was a kid. That's my home. I won't never sell it. I'd rent it out before I'd sell it. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of me selling it. I would not.
I not saying there's a setback, but if it's the county's right of way, they should be back.
Yeah,
Not to be on the right of way, they're not to be junk cars or operable cars on the right
But my
of way.
problem with that is, I don't know
I
where the
think I
right
would
of
need to be a
ways are.
certain foot off the road.
Who
A good
does?
distance to
Yeah,
kind of make it look a little bit, feel like yes.
sometimes it depends on the road.
Is there a
Depends on the road,
difference
there's a survey.
If you ask Barry Poole, it depends on the road, so you have to get with him
junk
about.
or salvage yard?
I'm sorry, I
Some
didn't hear your question.
Is
flats
there
go to
a
the center of the road.
difference between us wrecking junk and salvage, or is that one and the same?
For zoning purposes, it's kind of lumped into one operation, junkyards. And that's why we created the dismantler's license. So we know that they're a legitimate business.
Okay, with that being said, the Lee Cycle Shop came in to request a dismantler's license, and we denied that request because it had been rezoned to C1, which does not allow for dismantling. It's in the incorrect zone. But he still runs parts and salvage is what it's called, correct?
Motorcycle parts.
Where is
So we
that?
denied the dismantlers. We denied the request for a
Scotty Lee.
letter for the state to have a
Scotty Lee.
dismantler's license.
Where is that?
Across the road from me. I'm 2343, Cypress Springs, on Road Junction Lane.
Junction Lane?
Road Junction Lane.
One on Cumberland burned, and then or whatever. And then there's one out on Buffalo Trail.
Used to
Is it still there?
I don't know if it's
the
sold.
buildings there, no, above Tom's there?
Yeah.
No.
No, he moved
Not
across the road
operational.
because Scotty worked for him.
He moved from there and went to, down there, just up from Napa,
Yeah.
behind East High School, and that
The
old modern building.
Modern building
Okay.
there.
And then, is they still there? Is there something over there?
still there.
Inside there.
So
Yeah.
I didn't put him on this because he doesn't have a dismantler's license. I
What's the
didn't,
definition of that?
okay, and that's, well, the state requires you to have a zoning letter to have a dismantler's license. I've never had a request for a salvage.
I mean, what's the difference between a dismantler and a junkyard? A junkyard's taking, he's dismantling cars and selling parts.
Yeah.
I mean, has that got something to do with crushing and dismantling license?
That's kind of what my question was.
Yeah, that's why I started that.
Is
Is there
there
a
three things?
difference between the two?
Because it's just, they're dismantling, the junkyard dismantling the car.
Cars
He sells the motor,
too.
he sells the front end, he sells the.
Okay, and that's
Pick up
fine for the
doors, too.
junkyards, but this one is the motorcycle parts and salvage. He requested the dismantler's license and we did not give him the
I
zone.
got you, but why was he asking for that?
Because he wanted to do the dismantling and have the junk bikes, the motorcycles, so he could sell the parts.
So what does he do now?
That's what he's doing.
Exactly what he's doing.
Amen.
Whatever he wants.
Break the law. They do whatever they want to do and get by with it. I know. That's not right.
Because that's something,
Shut up,
that's gotta be
William.
something technically different. Because when you read here in permission today,
I suspect the state has that well defined.
Like Doug pointed out, it might be something we want to take a look at, the state permit, it's, you know, a lot of regulations.
They have a lot of, and I think they've updated them and changed some of them from what I've seen.
And it gives a right to local government too, to some degree.
Okay.
Environmentally, and I mean, when you have a junkyard, you can find environmental situations.
So Joe, what are you suggesting that we change, basically? Go through that. What do you want to change?
Okay, there's some extra sheets up here, but it's pretty much a summary
Right.
of what's being proposed. Under this section, section 7.4, there was some language in there that stated, and this is existing, variances may be granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals where traffic safety is an issue. Well, because that's so specific, it kind of implies that the only variances that are ever going to be granted are related to traffic safety. And really, it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, it's a relief board that they go to when they go to the BZA because they're trying to get some deviation from the rigid, strict compliance with the zoning. They may have a unique situation, but there's a lot of multiple factors that could be involved, not just traffic safety. So one of the proposals is to remove that sentence entirely and so that the BZA can look at that on a case-by-case basis and justify whatever the factors are, their decision one way or another, because this pins it down just to traffic safety, that's it. Let's see, y'all can follow along with me because I'm reading it right from the sheet. And also the addition with the disclaimer of shall not exceed a maximum of 12 feet for any of the operations, just because it's not clear on that right now. You would assume if they did put a screen up, their operation would be below the screen, but it doesn't really say that one way or another. So it may be possible to stack junker cars and still have that screen in place and meet the letter of the law, but they're over the screen. Chances are that's not gonna happen. That's probably a worst case scenario, but it would be good to have something in there that clearly stated that. And then the last section is really what we've been debating on tonight, and that's replacing that section K, which requires junkyards to come into compliance after 3 years. Delete that entirely if it's not legally defensible, and replace that with a section that's titled expansions, and that way everybody knows what constitutes an expansion at this point on. So the junkyard regulations essentially would regulate brand new junkyards and any expansions of existing junkyards. Can't really do a whole lot on what's already there. So there's 3 separate amendments related to this.
It's pretty detailed.
Could we add the license requirement there under K?
We could do that, yeah, absolutely. It's more of an administrative issue, but we can put it in the zoning. I think what we should do is do our due diligence and look into some of these state requirements for dismantling, see how they define it, see what constitutes it, and also see what possible consequences are from the state if you don't renew your dismantling license, because we don't have those answers right now because they're state requirements.
It's very stringent requirements. They're a 2-year license, $400. I'm assuming they're gonna have to pay $400 every 2 years. There's some significant requirements that
And re-inspection too, if they.
Re-inspection, compliance.
Fee there for that too. Plus even water drainage, so.
compliance, stormwater drainage compliance with EPA, TDEC, all kinds of stuff.
It's huge stuff in here.
Environmental alone, is local.
Well, is that for new, or is that for grandfather?
Well,
This is for
yeah,
new.
have to defer to
That'd
the,
be if you're licensed, I would think, period.
I would think in
You
order
would
to
change
maintain your
with-
license,
You
you're
get your
gonna have to
license,
apply
you're
every 2
changed.
years. If you're gonna apply every 2 years, you ought to have to comply
Right.
each time you get to pay your $400. And it's not
Okay,
like falling off the log.
what if I go to the state and ask if all of our junkyards have dismantling license, and I have some that do not have their dismantler's license and they have not had their dismantler's license for quite some time? What happens then?
You ask the state when you're on the phone with them.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Okay, but if they just closed it and that property says they're just selling parts or they're repairing cars,
Yeah.
They're recycling.
okay? And the state says, well, you're closed, you're off our books, but they're still running a business without the license. They still maybe have a business license with us for fixing the cars or having the parts. When do they lose their grandfather status as a junkyard?
To me, dismantling a car is taking parts off of it, like they're doing a car that's no longer operable, and you're taking parts off of it.
But they call it auto repair also.
I don't care if you're in the auto repair business or not, you're dismantling that automobile.
There's a definition somewhere.
If you're
There's a definition somewhere.
obtaining a significant part of your income from your business, from dismantling cars and selling parts,
Yeah.
then I'd say you're a dismantler.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it without a license,
there's a facility thing right here that if you operate 2 businesses, it has to be securely and unable to be opened if you are operating what you just said, salvage and car
Auto
business.
repair.
So that's probably another loophole.
Because you
right
can
there.
pull up some of our junkyards and they have auto repair. They don't say salvage, they have auto repair.
has to be permanently sealed between the businesses if it's on the same lot.
Yeah,
That goes for motorcycles too, does it not?
I would think so.
Now, that's a state requirement there, so we might look at that and adopt more.
We might, if you were to talk to them, ask them who enforces it at the state level.
Yeah, does somebody come in and say you're closed and you have to move all of this, you have to clean this up? I don't think that they would enforce the zoning.
Well, it spoke of a reinspection fee, so there's something about it. But obviously,
I'm with you, I don't close
I'd be
it
one
down.
to say that,
No.
don't have it.
Just that they're in compliance is all, not to shut them down.
It's gonna be
Yeah, right now, locally, it's pretty much silent on it, as far as what that means if you don't have your dismantling license locally.
Yeah.
But basically, if they're doing these junkyards without a dismantler's license, the argument can be made that they're operating an unlicensed business in violation of state law.
Let's say it's sat there and they've done no business, and it's been past the 30 months. Do they lose their grandfather status then?
Is it Cameron Road? You do any business out there?
I have two. And again, if they're thinking about selling the property to someone, there was a question that I had. Do they not have to prove to the office that it's not been closed for a period of time to be able to sell it to someone else, for them to open the business?
We're required to have a license. Show us a license.
Well, they can show you a business license, but they can't show you a state dismantler's license.
That's what I'm saying, I think we require both of them.
Right.
Show your tax return to us, I mean, business is legitimate, it's got a flow of income.
And again, I'm not trying to close them down, I'm just gonna, the office is not able at this time, or we haven't been, keeping up with their regulations unless they come in and they need a zoning amendment.
Well, but if you tighten it up on them, though, maybe they'd stop operating as much as cash, too.
And some of them advertise cash only.
Well, sure they did.
So,
Gee
again,
whiz.
I'm not trying to close them, but it's hard for us when they come in and say,
Why
can
wouldn't
I purchase this junkyard? And I'm like, what, how long has it been in operation? I don't know. So, and if you have a non-conforming use that has time limits on it to stay into compliance, wouldn't someone need to be keeping up with their,
Absolutely.
the license, so you would know that
That's
they?
Amen.
I would argue certainly that if you don't have a business license for 30 months, then you lost it.
Only if they have a business license but not a
I bet
dismantling
they don't
license.
have, I bet the one I'm thinking about doesn't have any license.
And a whole bunch of cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these are good questions, and they really tie into the administrative, how are we gonna administer this?
Paper out
And
there.
we can check, what we can do at this point is check with the state, see what exactly the requirements are for this manager's license. And if possible, tie that into the approval process, locally, and see what we can do. That way, at least you have something to go by, some date that they first got their dismantler's license, or something to substantiate that, yes, indeed, they are grandfathered in, or they're not.
Well, if they don't have a license, business license or a dismantler's license, I would say the grandfather law ain't no count anyway, because they done broke the law. They don't have neither to run the business.
And, okay, so do you all agree that it probably needs to wait before we go before county commission to approve
Don't
it?
bring this in front of the county commission.
Joe's not gonna be there with me either, so
No, I'm just saying, that's, I mean, what if you didn't say
just
that?
wait until we have it better.
We need some more
Clarify.
information and answers on some of this before we take it for the county commission, in my opinion.
A lot of
Is
questions.
there a way I can get a copy of those? statements?
Simplest question, there's a definition between them. What is a dismantler?
I made 10 of them.
I'd say it's pretty broad. I'd say it's pretty broad in order to allow them to hit you with $400. Probably drawing a very big net if you're buying and selling parts of vehicles. And this refers to an automotive dismantler and recycler as opposed to motorcycle.
Jesus.
What are you dismantling? You're dismantling motorcycles, cars, trucks, heavy equipment, boats. I don't know. Or is it see if there's a statute that defines it. I'll look at that.
Well, a lot of these questions are related more to how is the county gonna administer it. The question of whether the county can go back and compel existing grandfather junkyards to comply with the regulations, or they cannot, is a question that needs to be answered, so we know what direction that we want to move. Right now, I'm inclined to say they can.
That TDEC thing, I'm pretty sure you can, there's no grandfather there, but I'm pouring acid in the ground, and they catch me, I'm not saying it'd be acid, but to go to the extreme.
Right.
I believe that'd be an issue if there, and I don't know if there's a water runoff problem on any of them or not, but that would be to me, would be
To your point, though, right here, the business must comply with all federal, state, and local environmental law and rules.
it's on a new one.
Oh, is that only on the new one?
Well, that's
That's a dismantler license.
that's the application for it, but still, if there was I promise you that, you know, people that farm are finding that out
Right.
with the water and various things like that. And it might be like a avenue to, here,
Right.
you know, get this where it needs to be, or
Okay, we'll go ahead and research some of these questions. It's really up to the county. This can move forward if that question is answered, whether we can require the grandfather junkyards to comply with the requirements or we can't. These other questions that are related to administrative dismantler's license or the state requirements and so forth, that we can research in the meantime. But it's pretty much up to the county whether you want to move forward with this or not, based on whether we can or cannot enforce.
So, would it be a waste of taxpayers' money
What?
to proceed on with it, requiring his grandfather?
No, it's just the grandfather status. That's all we're.
Well, in my opinion,
Strange.
I don't think that you can require it. If you're grandfathered in, you're protected.
So that answers the question, doesn't it?
So,
And then we have all these other questions.
but if I've got to, again, there might be another part of the law that apply to them. And that environmental part would be, in my mind, if there's an issue, that'd be before you
It's
proceed.
amazing that they haven't done been down on them.
Amen.
They're pretty lenient, do what they wanna do in the junk industry.
And like I said, that's why you need the legal opinion.
Taxpayers.
I mean, there's some big, nice.
If he don't get it, I will.
in the world.
I don't drink well water, it's already contaminated.
Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap
But what
this up.
goes, flows downhill. Everybody gets a little bit of it.
And just not have things.
Care where you live.
There's not gonna be there.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. We appreciate your interest.
You're getting a little of it too, Dave, because it goes downhill.
No.